Hello, everyone. I'm Kamraun.
And I'm Billy. Welcome to the Horse Frog Podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors.
Today, we will be discussing Book 4, Chapter 15 of Deadhouse Gates, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 2 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it's most definitely not intended to be a replacement to reading the books. Know that Kamraun and I know that this series is the best fantasy series ever written, and we're approaching this from a purely fanboy point of view. No critique. We will simply marvel at Mr. Erikson's books.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
Now, quick warning, today's episode contains descriptions of extreme violence. Maybe not horrific or gory, just extreme violence. It's not recommended for children unless you're looking to screw those kids up, and then I guess just carry on, but please, not.
Not recommended.
Yes.
Our show is listener supported. If you would like to support us, we'd really appreciate it. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we are posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we would really like to hear from you, so send any feedback or comics you have to contact@horsefrogproductions.com.
All right, before we get into the episode today, I did want to address one thing.
I just now saw that. I'm so sorry. That's it.
We were discussing whether or not somebody's hair and nails continued to grow.
You have to see it from my point of view, folks. I have this note that says correction on nails and hair growing after death. It's like, it's very clinical sounding. It's like, when I just now saw it, it's pretty funny. I'm sorry.
Let's go back. We were talking about Shaik. Her hair was outside of the tarp that they threw over her, and it was kind of whipping around wildly, and her body had desiccated, but it had appeared that her hair had continued to grow after she died. And I thought that's actually what happened. But you said you thought it was because the body dried out and then it receded away from the nails and the hair, giving the appearance that they had actually lengthened when in fact it was just an optical illusion. And that is correct. I didn't have anything to back up my claim. It was just, that's what I'd heard. So it is a urban legend.
Right. Well, I have, what's funny with this image of her, I have this like anime image of like, you know what I'm talking about, with the Japanese anime hair with the just hanging out doing its own thing like some sentient being. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm imagining it's looking like here for some reason.
There is an episode of One Punch Man where one of the monsters has a bunch of seaweed for hair, and it's exactly like what you're talking about. It can attack the seaweed. Yeah, so.
Okay.
It's a kid, too, with all this crazy hair that's made out of seaweed.
Okay, nice.
All right, Chapter 15, Part 2. We pick up the chapter with Felicin and Hebrick. Felicin sat with her arms wrapped around herself, her eyes on the ground before her, steadily rocking in a slow cadence. The motion brought peace to her mind. Hebrick and the Tobla Kai were arguing about her, about prophecies and ill chance, about the desperation of fanatics. Mutual contempt swirled and bubbled between the two men, seemingly born in the instant they met, and growing darker with every moment that passed. So we finally get confirmation on who approached Leoman and the Toblakai at the end of Book 3. Mr. Erikson did a good job with misleading us into thinking that it was Apsalar.
Yeah, nice rope-a-dope. Tricked us out there.
You know where I learned the definition of a rope-a-dope?
Where's that?
From John Travolta in Broken Arrow. The terrible action movie in the late 90s.
Why is that the same one that I know? It's like, because I love, you know why? I love John Woo, dude. That's a John Woo flick. I love that movie. I love Travolta. He's so fantastically over the top and great in that movie. But yes, that's where I learned it too.
Oh,
that's great.
God. What are they?
The odds are great because me and you like the same movies, dude.
That's hilarious.
We love the same movies.
Yeah. So for those that have not watched that movie, would you like to explain to them what a rope-a-dope is?
I'll let you do it. You do search. You do better with the procedural stuff.
Okay. Well, the way he tells it, I haven't looked up to see if this is true. I assume it is. John Travolta's character is talking about boxing because in the movie, he's kind of a senior commander to this other, they're both pilots and they're boxing at the beginning of the movie. So that's kind of a theme that runs through the movie. One of them's bad. He's trying to sell off these nuclear weapons. and he's talking to the younger one about this boxer that he had a move called the rope-a-dope, where he fakes you out. Mr. Erikson pulled a rope-a-dope on us by throwing Apslar out there and never once indicating that it was going to be Felicin. And then when it comes down to it, Felicin's the one that ends up meeting up with Leomin and the Toblakai.
Yeah. I actually did look it up.
Okay.
It's a boxing It's a boxing tactic. You lean against the ropes and let your opponent tire themselves out. And then you make it seem like you're in trouble and just blocking while you're taking a whooping, but you're blocking, but saving your strength. This is what you do against Tyson. The people that win against Tyson usually do that. They let him tire himself out and then they take him.
Okay.
That's what it is that's how Ali did it to Foreman. I think that's where it became the big thing, was when Ali did it, because Ali was Ali, man.
Of course.
Even I'm not into sports at all, but it's like, even I like Ali. I mean, I like people like Barry Sanders. He's outstanding individuals who I don't even like their sport, but they stand out. It's like that.
Yeah. I mean, you got Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali. Yeah, there's a number of them. Ayrton Senna, Michael Schumacher from Formula One, those kind of people.
Yeah. Just folks that stand out because they're just so good at what they do.
Now we're going to have to go back and watch Broken Arrow and come back and say, did we not remember the way he explained it correctly?
It is time. It's been a long time. I'll have to watch it again. I'm always down for some bad Christian Slater, John Travolta flick any day of the week, dude. It beats almost anything coming on nowadays, and it's pretty original. It's John Woo. But what do you want, dude? That's why it's so over the top. It's John Woo. The only thing that makes that movie bad is the young lady that assists Slater. Mm-hmm. She's kind of a stick in the mud. Other than that, the film is pretty fun for me.
Yeah, that's pretty decent.
I don't know if it holds up, though. That's my fear.
We'll see.
We will see.
We will report back.
Okay. Challenge accepted.
Yeah. Leomin, who was crouched nearby, matched Felicin's silence. Before him lay the holy book of Dryzna. He guarded the tome in her stead, awaiting what he seemed to see as her inevitable acceptance that she was indeed Shaik reborn. Felicin thought, reborn, renewed, heart of the apocalypse, delivered by the unhanded in the suspended breath of the goddess, who waits still, waits as Leomin waits. Felicin, hinge of the world. She smiled. She rocked to distant cries, the ancient echoes of sudden, soul-jarring deaths. They seemed so far away now. Culp devoured beneath a seething mound of rats. Bodin burned in a fire of his own making. She thought, oh, the irony of that. He lived by his own rule and died with that same godless claim. Even as he gave up his life for someone else, still he'd say he made his vow freely.
Is that the first nice thing she said about Bodin or thought about him?
Is it nice? She's saying it's ironic about how he died.
Yeah, but the fact that he lived and died by his own rule is, I think, for some reason, I feel like it's almost an aberration. So therefore, it kind of falls into almost a nice category from her compared to what she normally thinks about people. This is almost nice.
Right.
Is that what it is?
I see her as just pointing out the irony of how he lived and died by his own, air quotes, rules, but then he gave up his life for someone else.
No, that's true. It is kind of ironic. I hadn't thought about it like that.
But again, I could be wrong too.
Right.
I just took it quite literally. But later on in this chapter, we do start to see evidence that she is feeling differently about Bodin.
Okay.
She thought to herself, these are the things that bring stillness. Stones grated beside her. She knew the feeling of Hebrick's presence and had no need to look up. He muttered under his breath, then fell silent. A moment later he said, they want to get moving, lass. They're both far gone. The oasis, Shaik's encampment, is a long walk. There's water to be found on the way, but little in the way of food. The Toblakai will hunt, but game's gone very scarce. The soul taken in divers, I gather. In any case, whether you open the book or not, we have to move. She said nothing and continued rocking. Hebrick cleared his throat, then said, for all I rage against their mad, fevered notions, and counsel most strongly against your accepting them, we need these two, and the oasis. They know Raraku better than anyone else. If we're to have any chance of surviving, Felicin thought, surviving. After a moment, Hebrick went on. I'll grant you, I've acquired senses that make my blindness less of a liability, and these hands of mine, reborn. Nonetheless, Felicin, I'm not enough to guard you. And besides, there is no guarantee that these two will let us walk away from them, if you understand my meaning. Again, she thought, surviving. Heberick said, Wake up, lass! You got some decisions to make. Still looking at the ground, Felicin said, Shaik drew her blade against the Empire. Heberick said, A foolish gesture. Felicin said Shaik would face the Empress, would send the Imperial armies into a blood-filled abyss. Heberick said, History recounts similar rebellions, lass, and the tale is an endless echo. Glorious ideals lend a vigor of health to Hood's bleached grin, but it's not but a glamour, and righteousness. Felicin said, Who cares about what's righteous, old man? The Empress must needs answer Shaik's challenge. Heberick said, Aye. Felicin said, And shall dispatch an army from Quantali. Heberick said, Likely already on the way. Felicin continued, And who commands this army? She heard Heberick draw a sharp breath and felt him flinch back. He said, Lass, the adjunct will lead that army. Tavora comes to put down the rebellion. And I forgot to mention this last week, but when that sailor was speaking with Kalam, he mentioned that their prior load had been weapons for the adjunct's army. Presumably, they're transporting a portion of the weapons that army's going to need to 7 cities so that when they get here, they'll have what they need to go into Raraku and deal with Shaik.
Oh, I like the one thing that comes up. Well, we're not going to get into this book, but the fact that Tavora is an adjunct, and the last adjunct in Gardens of the Moon was more subtle, shall we say, than leading an army.
Yeah, she was incognito.
Yeah.
Traveling around with 1 or 2 companions at most.
Yeah, I like the idea that power is so great or so small as it needs to be. Very intriguing character, the adjunct.
It kind of makes you wonder if, depending on the skills of the adjunct, whether Lorne would have been asked to lead the army. Tavora is the more tactical of the two, yes. I would say. Lorne is more the investigative type that gets in their hands dirty.
Yeah, and that may be what it is that because what we know and what we will learn, we've learned already something about her being Tavora, that, yeah, she was going to be a formidable. I'm interested in getting to her later as well.
Back to my thought, I do wonder if they tailor the role of the adjunct to the person that is the adjunct skills.
Yeah, that's a good call. Because I can see why she would rise to that kind of rank and be the adjunct and the leader of the army because of what we know about her skill. Even though she's untested, she's still untested, right?
In this arena, yes.
Yeah, but she knows what's what.
Yeah, she was running the household when Ganos went to visit. He went home.
Yeah.
I think it was mentioned back then that she was into doing like tactical games and always liked to win.
Yes, and it also mentioned the one other aspect about her was mentioned that she would have known where people got everything. She so knew every detail of everything and known who the armies were and, down to who the people that supplied them were, kind of deal. I think that's mentioned about her.
Oh, I guess it was Ganos that could recognize the military by their sigils, like what division they're in.
That's right.
I do seem to remember something similar for Tavora.
Yeah.
Felicin snapped out a hand and rose to her feet. She turned to find Leoman staring at her, his sun-scoured face striking her suddenly as Raraku's own. She thought, harder than Benneth's, without any of the affectations. Sharper than Bodden. Oh, there's wit there, in those cold, dark eyes. She said, to Shaik's encampment. He glanced down at the book, then back to her. Felicin raised an eyebrow and said, Would you rather walk through a storm? Let the goddess wait a little longer before renewing her fury, Leoman. She saw him reappraise her. A glimmer of uncertainty arrived in his eyes. Felicin was pleased. After a moment, he bowed his head. Heberick hissed, Felicin, have you any idea? Felicin interrupted, Better than you, old man. Now keep quiet. Heberick said, Perhaps we should part ways now. She swung to him and said, No. I think I shall have need for you, Heberick. He gave her a bitter smile and said, As you're conscious, lass, I'm a poor choice. She thought, Yes, you are, and all the better for that. They followed an ancient path that showed signs of having once been on a road, running the length of a ridge toward a distant mesa. The path was littered with red-glazed potsherds that crunched underfoot. That word potsherds gets me.
Yeah, me too. That's why I laughed. Yeah, potsherds. I posted a meme on the Facebook one. Was like a look into the Malazan universe, and it's potsherds all over the place. You know, I'm like, all right.
The Toblakai scouted 500 paces ahead, unseen in the ochre haze, while Leoman led Felicin and Hebrick. He rarely spoke, was frighteningly gaunt, and moved so silently over the ground that Felicin had begun to imagine him no more than a spectre. Felicin glanced back and saw Hebrick smiling. She asked, "Something amusing you?" Hebrick said, "This road is crowded, lass." Felicin asked, "The same ghosts as in the buried city?" Hebrick shook his head and said, "Not as old. These are memories of an age that followed the First Empire." Leoman stopped and turned at that. Hebrick said, "Oh, aye, Raraku is showing me her secrets." Leoman asked, "Why?" Hebrick shrugged. Felicin eyed Leoman and asked, "Does that make you nervous, Leoman?" She thought, "Because it should." Leoman glanced at her, then asked, "What is this man to you?" She thought, "I don't know." She said, "My companion, my historian, of great value since I am to make Raraku my home." As long as she's telling the truth, I guess this answers the question of why she chose to keep him around.
Yeah, I guess it does. And I think it's not far off when he says kind of like a conscience a little bit. Well, it's also somebody that she's been with since the beginning of the book. So it's somebody she knows, and it's a friendly face.
That was my first thought. She wants to keep him there to remember maybe what she's gone through a little bit, but also as a companion from that period of her life.
Maybe.
But then seeing this is more of a advisory thing, but she could be telling Leoman anything at this point.
Yeah. Well, Leoman, she sussed him out. She can see that he's scary in Benneth. Benneth was pretty hardcore, and this guy's a lot more hard.
A lot more intelligent.
Oh, yes. He is. Yeah, he's a pretty sinister fella. But I like Leoman, though. He's a very compelling individual here. That's one thing. That's what I love. That's another thing. A great thing about these characters from this side. There's some pretty unscrupulous lot, but at the same time, very compelling characters in this bunch here with Toblakai, Leoman, some of the people in her camp. Not necessarily interesting, but nasty, but very strange and very well written people.
Yeah, when we get to that camp, that's going to be some interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Leoman said, "The holy desert's secrets are not his to possess. He plunders them as would any foreign raider. If you desire Raraku's truths, look within yourself." Felicin almost gave a laugh at that, but knew its bitterness would frighten even her. They continued on. The ridge narrowed, revealing the ancient road's foundation stones, 10 or more feet down on either side, the slope beyond falling away a further 50 or 60 feet. The Toblakai awaited them at a place where the road bed had collapsed to create large, dark holes in the ground. From one of them issued the soft trickle of water. Hebrick said, "An aqueduct beneath the road. It used to flow in a torrent." That's some pretty advanced engineering, as well as quite a massive scale to the construction.
Right. And this is the First Empire, right? I'm sorry, I'm air quoting here for the people listening. The First Empire, right? So I must like the place where Herbert and Felicin found themselves in that cliff city.
It seems to be part of the same civilization.
That's kind of what I was thinking. So do you think this thing spanned the whole continent? Where they were the seven holies, probably may not even been holy, might have been some highly advanced race, because they talk about these roads a couple times, how the roads still reveal themselves sometimes and they're perfectly still nothing out of line.
It's hard to know, because I don't think we're ever really told a ton about the structure of the, I mean, you get little bits here and there throughout the books, but I don't think it really delves too deeply into how this continent was constructed. We just get to see the current state of it.
Yeah. Which is always intriguing. Always intriguing.
This is one of those things that tickles the imagination a little bit, because you're like, man, what kind of civilization? We saw that city that was in that mesa, and it was pretty fancy. And then they have these laser straight roads with aqueducts running beneath them. And the sand had been covering them, but still, once it's lifted up by the whirlwind and you can see they're still in place, the stones are all there. It's pretty crazy.
The water's running still in a sealed aqueduct, which is like, that is really advanced.
Have you ever wondered why so many sitcom characters deliver babies inside elevators?
Or how on TV a second blow to the head can reverse amnesia?
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we break down 4 sitcom episodes that share a common trope or cliche. So if you want to critically examine how Carlton lost his virginity,
Or discover how sitcom kids mysteriously age several years between seasons?
or dissect the sibling bond between Blossom and her brother, Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Look up the Sitcom Study on any podcast app. Wasn't Joey Lawrence Blossom's brother?
That was a test, and you passed.
Felicin saw the Toblachai scowl in response to Hebrick's observation. Leoman gathered the water skins and proceeded to crawl down into the hole. Hebrick sat down to rest. After a moment, he cocked his head and said, "Sorry you had to wait for us, Toblachai with the secret name, though I imagine you'd have trouble getting your head through that cave mouth in any case." The Toblachai sneered, revealing filed teeth. He said, "I collect tokens of the people I kill, tied here on my belt. One day I will have yours." Felicin said, "He means your ears, Hebrick." Hebrick said, "Oh, I know, lass. Tortured spirits writhe in this bastard's shadow. Every man, woman, and child that he's killed. Tell me, Toblachai, did those children beg to live? Did they weep, cry out for their mothers?" The Toblachai said, "No more than grown men did." Felicin saw that the Toblachai had paled, though she sensed that it was not his killing of children that bothered him. No, there was something else in what Hebrick had said. She thought, tortured spirits. He's haunted by the ghosts of those he's slain. Forgive me, Toblachai, if I spare you no pity. I find it interesting that Hebrick hasn't mentioned this with anyone else that they've come across, and this leads me to believe that the Toblachai is unique in that the souls of those he has slain are tied to him.
So do you think that this is specifically something due to them being a Toblachai?
I don't know, because Hebrick hasn't encountered any other Toblachai.
That's true. Is this one of the traits of a single entity type individual that creates his own warren? It's mentioned that it happens before. No worshippers, just victims to power the warren?
Oh,
or
man.
something like that?
Dude.
That's pretty sick.
crazy.
This
Yeah.
reminds me of the quorum stuff I told you from Michael Moorcock. Part of that eternal champion stuff. This guy lost a hand and lost an eye from some gods, and he found another hand and an eye. It was like a gem, and he couldn't see with it. He could lift it up and see, well, actually, he could see with it, but he couldn't see anything. It was an empty place. But then when he killed people or things, their souls would go to that place, and then he could see them in there and summon them out with the hand
Oh, man.
to act for him. And then they would be freed after they were let loose from his weird limbo. But it's like, oh, it kind of reminds me of something like that in a weird way.
It's almost like the Dragnapur Warren, in a way.
Yeah.
But they're not enslaved necessarily, but they're trapped in his wake.
Yeah. That's a really nice way of putting it. It's like, dadgummit, we are enslaved, but we're enslaved because we want to stay alive. This chaos kind of thing. Isn't that a weird idea that instead of having worshipers, you just have victims?
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah.
Is that what powers Warren? His rage and his victims. It's like, oh my gosh, that's awful.
Yeah, I always thought of
horrific.
it as him having an indomitable will.
Yes, that's part of it. I just didn't know if this was just other aspects of his indomitable will. It's all tied to that indomitable will.
Mm-hmm.
He would have been a great Green Lantern.
What would he have come up with?
Oh my gosh. He would have been, I don't know, but it would have been wild. It would have been plain. He would have been, he didn't need anything but just plain. His strength of will would just crush Superman.
I'd like to hear that. I'd like to see that battle.
Yeah, that'd be pretty rough.
Might be a villain worthy of Superman.
Yeah, I think so. Have we done this? We need to recommend this to Mr. Erikson. Dude, a crossover between, forget Doomsday. It's like, forget that fella. This is for goodness sake. Oh, dadgummit.
Hebrick said, "This land is not home to Toblachai. Has the rebellion's lure of slaughter called you here? From where did you crawl, bastard?" The Toblachai said, "I have said to you all that I shall say. When I speak to you next, it will be when I kill you." Quite the way with words.
I love how mouthy Hebrick is to him, too. That's even great. It's like, dadgum.
This is so uncharacteristic of Hebrick, too.
Yes. Yes, he's so chill through the whole book, and all of a sudden he's just lippy to this guy. It's just like, bring it. He's
Yeah,
wanting
they
to
do
bring it.
not like each other.
No, no, they don't.
Yeah. Leoman emerged from the hole, cobwebs snagged in his hair, the water skins bulging at his back. He growled, "You will kill no one until I say so." He then swung a glare to Hebrick and said, "And I've not yet said so." There was something in the Toblakai's expression that spoke of immense patience coupled with unwavering certainty. He rose to his full height, accepted a water skin from Leoman, then set off down the trail. Hebrick stared after him. He said, "The wood of that weapon is soaked in pain. I cannot imagine he sleeps well at night." Leoman muttered, "He barely sleeps at all. You shall cease baiting him." Hebrick grimaced, then said, "You've not seen the ghosts of children tied to his heels, Leoman, but I shall make the effort to keep my mouth shut." Leoman said, "His tribe made few distinctions. There was kin, and those who were not kin were the enemy. Now, enough talk." I wouldn't have expected the Toblakai to share this type of information with Leoman. He is extremely reticent about his affairs. I would categorize his style of speech as laconic.
Yeah, I agree, and I would like to know more about their meeting. Can you imagine what Liam would have done to gain his respect? To gain Toblakai's respect?
They had to go through something together.
Yeah.
We get a bit of that, don't we, in House of Chains?
Was that him or is that... Oh, that's right.
100 paces on, the road suddenly widened, opening out onto the flat of the mesa. A ruined city lay before them, a broad causeway that ran in a straight line toward what had once been a grand gate, worn down by centuries of wind to knee-high stumps of bleached stone, as was the city beyond. Hebrick whispered, "A slow death." The Toblakai was already striding through the distant gates. Leoman said, "We must cross through to the other side, down to the harbor, where we shall find a hidden camp, and a cache, unless it's been pillaged." The city's main street was a dusty mosaic of shattered pottery, red-glazed body sherds, gray, black, and brown rims. Felicin said, "I will think on this when I next carelessly break a pot." Herbert grunted. "I know of scholars who claim they can map entire extinct cultures through the study of such detritus." Felicin drawled, "Now there's a lifetime of excitement." Hebrick said, "Would that I could trade places with one of them." Felicin said, "You're not serious, Hebrick." Hebrick said, "I am not. Feiner's tusk, lass. I am not the adventurous type." Felicin said, "Perhaps not at first, but then you were broken, shattered, like these pots here." Hebrick said, "I appreciate the observation, Felicin." Felicin said, "You cannot be remade unless you are first broken." Hebrick quipped, "You have become very philosophic in your advanced years, I see." She thought, "More than you realize." She said, "Tell me you've learned no truths, Hebrick." He snorted, then said, I've learned one. There are no truths. You'll understand that yourself years from now, when Hood's shadow stretches your way." Ahead of them, Leoman said, "There are truths. Raraku, Dryjna, the whirlwind and the apocalypse, the weapon in the hand, the flow of blood." Hebrick growled, "You've not made our journey, Leoman." Leoman said, "Your journey was rebirth, as she has said, and so there was pain. Only fools would expect otherwise." Hebrick made no reply to that. They walked on. A precise geometric plan was evident in the layouts of streets and alleys, a half circle of concentric rings, with the flat side the harbor itself. The remains of a large palatial structure were visible ahead. The massive stones at the center had been more successful in withstanding the centuries of erosion. Felicin glanced back at Hebrick and asked, "Still plagued by ghosts?" Hebrick said, "Not plagued, lass. There was no great unleashing of brutality here, only sadness. And even that was not but a subcurrent. Cities die. Cities mimic the cycle of every living thing. Birth, vigorous youth, maturity, old age, then finally, dust and potsherds. In the last century of this place, the sea was already receding, even as a new influence arrived, something foreign. There was a brief renaissance, we'll see evidence of that ahead, at the harbor, but it was short-lived. You know, Felicin, I begin to understand something of the lives of the Ascendants. To live for hundreds, then thousands of years, to witness this flowering in all its feudal glory. Is it any wonder that their hearts grow hard and cold?" Felicin said, "This journey has brought you closer to your god, Hebrick." The comment stung him into silence. She saw what Hebrick had hinted at when they reached the city's harbor. What had once been the bay had silted in, yet 4 cyclopean channels had been constructed, reaching out to vanish in the haze. Each was as wide as 3 city streets and almost as deep. Again, that's another impressive feat of engineering. That's a lot of labor to clear that dirt out.
Mm-hmm. And I also love the old cyclopean. That's always usually a reference or a nod to H.P. Lovecraft.
The only time I've seen it used outside of this is in Austin Powers, when he refers to number 2 as his cyclopean comrade or something, because he has one eye. He's got an eye patch.
One eye, right? Yeah.
Yes. Beside her, Hebrick said, "The last ships sailed out from these canals. The heaviest transports scraped bottom at the far mouths and could only make way with the tide at peak. A few thousand denizens remained until the aqueducts dried up. This is one story of Raraku, but alas, not the only one, and the others were far more violent, far more bloody. Yet I wonder, which was the more tragic?" Leoman said, "You waste your thoughts on the past." He was interrupted by a shout from the Toblakai, who had appeared near one of the canal heads. Falling silent, Leoman set off toward his companion. As Felicin moved to follow, Hebrick grasped her arm, the unseen hand a cool, tingling contact. He waited until Leoman was beyond earshot, then said, "I have fears, lass." She interrupted, "I'm not surprised. That Toblakai means to kill you." Hebrick said, "Not that fool. I mean Leoman." Felicin said, "He was Shaik's bodyguard. If I am to become her, I'll not need to mistrust his loyalty, Hebrick. My only concern is that he and the Toblakai did such a poor job of protecting Shaik the first time around." Hebrick said, "Leoman is no fanatic. Oh, he might well make appropriate noises to lead you to believe otherwise, but there is an ambivalence in him. I don't for a moment believe he thinks you are truly Shaik reborn. The simple fact is the rebellion needs a figurehead, a young, strong one, not the worn-down old woman that the original Shaik must have been. Hood's breath, she was a force in this desert 25 years ago. You might want to consider the possibility that these 2 bodyguards didn't break a sweat in their efforts to defend her." Do you agree with this take on Leoman? Who else besides a fanatic would sit next to a dead body and a book in the middle of a desert, starving to death for weeks? All for what? A random girl to magically appear to fulfill a prophecy?
Well, he is really an enigma to me, and sometimes he does seem ambivalent to me in some ways, but I think that it will be revealed to us that I'm assuming that Shaik is probably pretty notoriously accurate with her prophecies. And that would be the thing, not necessarily being a true believer, but a believer in her knowing that what she sees come true. Maybe she's saw this and he's just going to sit here and wait because he knows it's going to happen. That is a type of faith and almost fanatical to some extent. But I, for some reason, get this kind of strange ambivalence about him too, because when you talk with him, he's really level-headed, real chill. Doesn't seem to be too hostile yet, or if not giving the impression, at this point, he's kind of a rescuer to these people in some aspects. So I just don't know what I think about Leoman. He's an enigma. That's all I can say.
When I think about what Hebrick knows about Leoman at this point, he might not trust his motivations, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of, we know he sat there for weeks waiting, and I can only see a fanatic doing something like that. Otherwise, they would have left.
Yeah, you're probably right. Maybe his time sitting here at the desert has taught him a little bit more patience. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, but why else would he have sat here for weeks? I don't know.
I don't know. He's just, at the moment, maybe he doesn't have a place to do. Maybe they got no place to go except the Oasis. And he was just waiting around. So it's like, well, at least I got somebody now and go back to the Oasis with. Okay.
Felicin looked at Hebrick and said, "Then I can also assume they will have greater cause this time around." Hebrick said, "Provided you play their game, Leoman's game to be more precise. He will be the one to speak for you to the army at the encampment. If he has cause, he will hint at doubts, and they will tear you apart." Felicin said, "I have no fear of Leoman. I understand men like him, Hebrick." His lips closed into a thin line. She drew her arm away from his unnatural grip and began walking. Hebrick hissed, Benneth was less than a child to this Leoman. He was a thug, a bully, a tyrant to a handful of the downtrodden. Any man can preen with great ambitions, no matter how pathetic his station, Felicin. You are doing worse than clinging to the memory of Benneth. You are clinging to the airs he projected, and they were naught but delusions. She whirled and hissed, You know nothing! You think I fear what a man can do? Any man? You think you know me? That you can know my thoughts? Know what I feel? You presumptuous bastard! Hebrick! She trembled with fury. His laughter struck her like a blow, shocking her into silence. He said, Dear lass, you would keep me at your side. As what? An ornament? A macabre curiosity? Would you burn out my tongue to balance my blindness? I am here to keep you amused, then, even as you accuse me of presumption. Oh, that is sweet indeed. Suddenly weary, Felicin quietly said, Stop talking, Hebrick. If one day we do come to understand each other, it will be without words. Who needs swords when we have our tongues, you and I? Let us sheathe them and have done with it. He cocked his head and said, One last question, then. Why would you have me stay, Felicin? She hesitated before answering him, wondering at how he would take this particular truth. She thought, Well, that is something. Not long ago I would not have cared. She said, Because it means survival, Hebrick. I offer for Bodden. Head still cocked, Hebrick slowly wiped one forearm across his dusty brow. He said, Perhaps we'll yet come to understand each other. The canal mouth was marked by a broad series of stone steps, over 100 in all. At the base, on what had once been the seabed, a more recent stone wall had been constructed, providing attachment points for a canvas shelter. A ring of stones surrounded an ash-stained fire pit nearby, and the old cobbles that had once covered the cache were now tumbled about, a gutted cairn. The subject of the Toblakai's outcry were the 7 half-eaten corpses scattered about the camp, each a mass of flies. The blood in the fine white sand was only a few hours old, still gummy to the touch. The stench of loosened bowels soured the hazy air. Leoman crouched by the stairs, studying the bestial prints that marked a blood-stained ascent back up into the city. After a long moment, he glanced over at the Toblakai and said, If you want this one, you'll go on your own. The Toblakai bared his teeth and said, I will have no one else crowding me. He unslung his waterskin and bedroll, then dropped them. He unsheathed his wooden sword, holding it as if it was no more than a twig. Hebrick snorted from where he leaned against the stone wall. He said, You plan to hunt down the soul-taken? I take it that in your tribe you are nearing the end of the average expected lifespan, assuming your kin are as stupid as you. Well, I, for one, will not grieve your death. The Toblakai maintained his vow, refusing to address Hebrick, though his grin broadened. He swung to Leoman and said, I am Raraku's vengeance against such intruders. Leoman said, If you are, then avenge my kin. The Toblakai set off, taking the steps 3 at a time, and not slowing until he reached the top, where he paused to study tracks. A moment later, he slipped beyond their line of sight. A few notes here. Taking stairs 3 at a time.
Well, has anything about their stature of the Toblakai been established?
Yes, I believe it was mentioned that he was around 7 feet tall early in the book. Remember when Kalam delivered the book to Shaikh?
Oh, yeah. Okay. But he's still a young man, though.
Also, even though Toblakai hasn't been eating enough, he still ran up those 100 steps like it was nothing.
That's true. I was thinking about the hunger aspect. Not enough. They did starve for a while. And it did seem like right before they showed up, I remember them getting a little grub on. But yes, it is a beast mode move. And basically, anymore, when you think of beast mode, do you always think about him? Giant face tattooed unstoppable maniac?
I don't know, actually. I don't really have a specific vision in mind when I think of beast mode. I'd have to put some thought into it.
Well, I don't necessarily either, but for some reason he is just the epitome and the absolute essence of beast mode all the time. And I just can't wait till we get to his story.
Yeah. Finally, look at the confidence with which he takes on this task. Only someone that is either overconfident or has a history of great success has this type of confidence.
Yeah. And I'm assuming his is always from the latter. His knows and has had a lot of type of work, especially here this past few months in the desert.
Yeah. Hebrick said, The soul-taken will kill him. Leoman shrugged and said, Perhaps. Shaikh saw further into his future, however. Felicin asked, And what did she see? Leoman said, She would not say, yet it appalled her. Felicin said, The seer of the apocalypse was appalled? She looked at Hebrik, whose expression was drawn taut, as if he just heard confirmation of some glimmer of the future he had himself sensed. She said, "Tell me, Leoman, of her other visions."
I could almost hear a comic sense of worry in that the seer of the apocalypse was Paul.
Leoman had begun dragging the bodies of his kin to one side. He paused at her question, glanced over. He said, "When you open the holy book, they shall be visited upon you. This is Drajna's gift, among others." Felicin said, "You expect me to go through with this ritual before we reach the encampment?" Leoman said, "You must. The ritual is the proof that you are truly Shaik reborn." Hebrik grunted. "And what does that mean precisely?" Leoman said, "If she is false, the ritual shall destroy her." There's no going back from that one. That's quite the risk for the sake of vengeance.
Really a very big risk. I guess your odds are still just 50-50, though.
Isn't that good? 50-50?
I don't know. If you take things like she's either going to make it or she ain't, I'm like, as far as I'm concerned, it's 50-50.
All right, we're going to stop here and we'll finish out the chapter next week. For standout moments, finding out that it was Felicin and not Apsalar that came to Leoman and the Toblakai at the end of book 3.
Yeah, I like that. I like that misdirection.
It's a big info drop.
Yeah, big info drop. I love that reveal. And was this a hoodwink as opposed to a rope-a-dope then?
If the definition is true, then yes, it is a hoodwink.
All right. Nice.
So to recap, the rope-a-dope is you pretend you're tired and then you come out and give them a smack.
Right.
Is that?
Yes. Sorry, now I'm going to go smack. Right. I feel like Sugar Smack now. Give him a smack and he'll smack you back. Like dig them. There we go. I couldn't think about it as dig them. Sorry.
Toblakai and Hebrik getting into it. You know, I've never heard Hebrik talking that much smack to anybody. So it was quite the different character than what we're used to seeing. And then all of this culminating in Toblakai saying that he wouldn't speak with Hebrik until he was going to kill him.
Yes. I like he's already broke that too.
Quite a way of talking to somebody.
He kind of broke it too already. He already said, "I am the voice of vengeance," or whatever he says before he stalks off after the soul taken. But it's just like,
well, he said that to Leoman though.
Oh, okay. He just said to no one in particular. Maybe that's what it is. But I myself,
no, he was talking to Leoman.
Oh, okay.
He just won't talk to Hebrik.
Oh, okay. Until he kills him. But I myself would be worried. But I do like how Hebrik isn't even bothered by this. Like he's already been there and done that, and he's just like been laughing at that dude, goading him on. It's pretty funny.
Mm-hmm. It was really interesting that Hebrik points out that Toblakai drags a chain of souls in his wake
with children's ghost. So does Toblakai just kill everything in his path? He doesn't strike me like Berserker necessarily, just usually very thorough.
We don't know enough about him yet to comment on that because we've only seen him in a couple of scenarios.
That's true.
But I guess if you listen to Leoman's explanation, tribal warfare can be a brutal thing.
That's true. And sometimes you need to kill everybody just so you don't have people coming after you.
Yeah, they take the women and then just kill the men and the boys, right?
Yeah, usually.
And that's throughout history. It's kind of been that way.
That's the way you do it.
Tribes get raided.
Yeah.
Felicin admitting that she is keeping Hebrik around for Bodin. That was character development for her.
Actual character development for her. This wasn't a trick like normal where she usually says something kind of maybe a little bit nicer than turn around and is twice as nasty for the next segment. You know, here it's actually like, just to kind of maybe remember Bodin almost. You know, I like that.
Yeah. And then she also did take a moment before saying anything to wonder how it would affect Hebrik, which she noted was not something that would have stopped her in the past.
Yeah. That is some nice growth.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, Toblakai setting off to hunt the soul taken.
Yeah.
That measure of confidence that he has is really incredible.
Oh, I do. I love it. And I really like, and I just love Toblakai. He's so cool. I'm glad we're to this point of the story because now we'll see him more in the coming chapters. And I like that and look forward to that. And I like the reveal that Shaik saw something in Tobakai's future that frightened her. You know, it's like, whoa, okay.
Yeah. It's appalling.
Yes, it's appalling. I won't have it any other way, sir. It's appalling.
All right. You got any final thoughts before we drop off here,
No,
Billy?
just great episode. Really like where we're getting ratcheted up here and getting excited as we start getting into this final books of this book and get into it. It's exciting.
It is very exciting. Great job tonight.
Hey, good job, buddy.
Thanks. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Hey, see y'all next week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.